Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Amy Dunham, Chief Communications Officer of Habitat for Humanity. Amy, what a pleasure to see you again. I am so excited to have this conversation because it is such a landmark for you and the organization. So welcome to the show once again.
Thank you so much for having me, Deborah. I'm looking forward to catching up.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly, as I said, it's such a momentous occasion. All right, well, let's talk about that. Habitat for Humanity is marking its 50th anniversary this year. So when you think about this milestone, what feels most important to honor and what feels most important to challenge?
I love this question. So, I think at its core, an anniversary is a very human celebration. It's, if it's a wedding anniversary or the anniversary of a company, it's really the people that made that happen rather than some sort of ephemeral business entity or the concept of marriage. So I think what's most important to honor are the people who've made Habitat get to 50 years. We started on an interracial farm in South Georgia in 1976. And the people that met at the first board meeting, they called themselves dreamer conferees, which I think is so charming. And they dreamed of one day helping house 1 million people. And for an organization that had not yet built anything, that felt pretty audacious. And we've now helped 65 million people build or improve the place they call home, in addition to all of the tens of millions of additional people we've helped through advocacy and financing. So I think really honoring the people who have been audacious to get us to this place, that's really important. But then what's to challenge is the sense that the problem is intractable. There's so much that housing is high level adulting. It's complex. There's financing, there's zoning, there's policy, there's so many different things. So challenging the notion that this is an intractable problem and challenging what it means to be part of the movement to bring affordable housing within reach. It's not just weekend bills. There's a lot of other ways to get involved. So really challenging what people believe they know about Habitat and how they can play a role in bringing affordable housing within reach. That's what we're really going to try to challenge this year.
That's important. That's extremely important, particularly in a world where housing is facing an affordability crisis. And in addition to that, there's climate pressure, there's economic inequality. There's so much. So challenge might be a really good word to start framing all of that. But I'm curious because you did talk about the personal level as well. What does the meaning of home now mean? Has it evolved since that founding on that farm?
Oh, so it's stayed consistent in the fact that it's very personal and very culturally nuanced. I mean, this is called the internationalist. So you understand, of course, that there's the meaning of home is different in a lot of different places around the world, and the challenges are different. So it's affordability in places like the United States, it's adequacy in other places. There's actually a glut of unoccupied homes in Europe, but still people that don't have access to housing. So it's different all around the world. So the nuance and the level of cultural nuance and personal nuance has not changed. And the resonance of what a safe and secure home feels like, that hasn't changed. It's gotten more out of reach. 1 in 3 humans on Earth today doesn't have access to safe, decent housing. And it's gotten more out of reach for more people. This is not a low income people problem any longer. This is an almost everyone problem. 42% of Americans think that owning a home is a luxury now. And a lot of people just feel like it's out of reach. So that's what's really changed, is that sense of a safe, secure home feels a lot more out of reach than it did 50 years ago.
Those are just staggering statistics. And honestly, when I was preparing the questions, that was not one that I expected. But when you do hear that, just how amazing that is, and that people think it's a luxury, that is scary, and that does almost redefine home. I know home is a sanctuary. I know that home is a safe place, but gee, to be a luxury, that's pretty, again, to own a home, that's pretty astounding. Well, look, let's go back to the anniversary for a minute. how do you want the organization to show up at 50? Not just in celebration, but in relevance. So I think you've started to outline that, but it is a celebration too. So I'm curious about how you balance both.
So when my parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, it was really important to us as their children and to them as the people that we're celebrating. But as soon as you get one concentric circle further out, their siblings and whatnot, the import decreases. And so we want to celebrate our anniversary with those that are closest to us. But as we look to be relevant with broader audiences, the celebration is less relevant. And so that's really where we're focused on the invitation to the movement. So people absolutely see affordability and access as a major challenge right now in housing. Most people have a tendency to look to government to solve that. And absolutely, government plays a really important role. They haven't really been thinking of habitat as part of the solution. And that's where we really want to say, and working with us, we're reflecting the things that you want to see in the world. Join the movement with us, because if we work together, we can actually make inroads. So positioning us as a part of the solution to the affordability crisis, that's really what we're going to try to amplify this year.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's absolutely terrific. I'm always so pleased as being a big believer in the Edelman Trust Barometer when you see um, institutions beyond government and even beyond business start to play a role, and nonprofits are that great bridge.
Absolutely. And so that's why our focus for this year is going to be a campaign called Let's Open the Door. Because it's such a broad metaphor that you see. I mean, goodness, you can probably count on fingers and toes the number of ads you've seen over the years that use the imagery of an open door, or movies, the imagery of an open door for opportunity. So we really want to take the conversation beyond the presentation of a key at the door, which is often where a habitat story ends, and really talk about what happens once you get over that threshold and once you open that door to opportunity. What does it mean? And how do we bring that to everyone in the world?
No, I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great metaphor. When we spoke the last time, you were guiding Habitat through a brand refresh. Now, I'm guessing that Let's Open the Door becomes, part of the outgrowth of that. But looking back now, in that work that you did on the brand refresh, what parts of that work mattered most as the organization did enter the 50th year? Was it really the positioning, or was it really changing mindsets?
I think at the core, self-awareness is the most important thing that came out of this, really acknowledging what do audiences understand about us today and where do we need to meet them and then bring them along. So for a brand that is beloved but not understood, kind of like, okay, where do you go from there? And so what a key learning is that our core values, our mission and vision is resonant so long as we tell a culturally contextualized story about what we do. So we saw opportunity, but it also helps us understand how do we bring people along on housing and help them understand how it connects to other things. That was really where we saw the most opportunity. Affordability is a huge issue in the United States. It's a big issue elsewhere in the world. It's not at the top. So how do we connect housing to other big issues like health, education, climate, disaster resilience? Because it absolutely connects, and just helping bring people along on that journey and where those opportunities were. Those are the things that we're building on most with the campaign this year.
It's got to be challenging because it sounds like you've got to balance that urgency of some of these key issues with also kind of a longer term, almost systems change, that you want people to understand about habitat. That's always got to be tough for nonprofits, but I think for you at this juncture, that'll be interesting to watch unfold.
It is, and it's finding the right intersection between the words and concepts that audiences outside of there is there's languages within the nonprofit sector, and then there's language within the housing sector. A lot of it feels very complex and inaccessible. So how do we tell the story and bring people along with the appropriate level of nuance, but not too much complexity? So that's what we've been looking to navigate, and we've established a new messaging, a new narrative framework that helps us tell the story of what Habitat's doing that helps us kind of bucket things in ways rather than going straight from mission and vision down into each of the individual programs that we do around the world. And we're hopeful that that's going to be helpful in helping people understand not just habitat, but housing and how they can help bring it within reach.
Makes a lot of sense. I sometimes think that you almost have to create a new language, so a language that people understand rather than get caught up in, as you say, the kind of systems that already exist in nonprofits or within housing. I'm looking forward to seeing that because it sounds like storytelling is going to be at the core.
Absolutely. Any nonprofit communications or marketing person who tells you that storytelling is not at the core is not in the right line of work. So, yes, you need data. Yes, you need compelling measurement, but you need those stories that really resonate with people so that you can feel the impact, not just see it.
And you were right. You don't want to, in what you said before, you don't want to oversimplify it because there is some complexity to the process. So to get that right is challenging, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you do it. Unless you want to tell us a little bit more now, but I think that part of it is to allow us to let it unfold and see where it goes.
Yeah, I would say it's not one of the things we had to release in these conversations internally was getting it right. It needed to be roughly right or not wrong because everything intersects and you could slice it. What's an x-axis? What's a y-axis? You could slice the problems and how to solve them any which way. You need to pick one. I love there's a quote I heard from Marissa Mayer once that was the right answer as a leader is the one you pick and stand behind. And there's a bit of that let's pick something and meet the audience where they are now. And if it evolves in 18 months, that's okay. Because that actually will be a sign of success that we've brought them along. And if it needs to evolve, so we're not carving it into stone tablets. So let's pick something that's roughly right, learn from it, and grow from there.
Oh, that's courageous. I'm curious, are there stories that you think you'll be telling that maybe couldn't be told 10 years ago?
That's such a good question. There are things that we're doing now that we weren't doing 10 years ago. So there's certainly that aspect. But when we did our brand refresh in 2016, we spoke only to US small dollar donors. And our whole brand platform and storytelling strategy was based on what resonated with those audiences. So we didn't tell stories about financing, about advocacy, because we heard from those audiences that oh, lobbying is dirty. We don't want to hear about that. So we did weed out a number of the stories that we could be telling. And so we have really expanded. We're doing new things. We're doing microfinance around the world that we weren't doing 10 years ago. We're doing financing within the United States as a community development financial institution. So yeah, really broadening the story and inviting people into, there's a lot of different ways to get involved in housing. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And it does take finding nuance, but not complexity.
That might be the phrase of the week, actually. Um, Let me ask, as a chief communications officer, what do you see as your greatest responsibility during a milestone like this? And I know you've stated, with the 50th anniversary marriage analogy that it matters to certain circles, but yet you still have a global role. So there must be something that is kind of driving you.
So we're doing our first ever brand campaign this year. And so new things are both exciting and challenging. And so it's my team is doing lots of new things, which of course then means that there's a lot of new dynamics, new roles, bringing things forward that we've not before. So there's a lot of learning across the network as to how to interact with our team going forward. So there's a lot of change management. So for me, I always put things in buckets of three. And so I see my role this year as vision, enthusiasm, and clarity. I
I
need
love
to
it.
provide a sense of what we're trying to accomplish with this campaign and then give people flexibility because there's 1,000 different ways we could do it, and most of them could work. So come with ideas, create the space where we can make mistakes. So I need to bring the enthusiasm because new stuff is hard. And it's a lot of long hours trying to figure new things out and try new things and be strategically opportunistic when things come up that we want to jump on. So I have to bring the enthusiasm for people because it can be really hard and draining. And then clarity. So if I'm going to say yes or no to something, I need to explain to people why, because so much is new. So here's what I'm thinking. Here's what's motivating me. So I'm spending a lot of time focusing on, am I bringing enthusiasm, vision, and clarity, and then giving people space to bring that themselves.
Yeah, and I think that when you offer the vision, and you just show how committed you are to it, sometimes, you're surprised at how your own team members find ways to translate it and how they get their own enthusiasm. And I think that's where that space comes in.
I love nothing more than when somebody comes up with a better idea than I have and then can celebrate them for it because selfishly, that takes the pressure off of me to come up with all of the ideas. But so I'm big on saying, how might we? Here's what I think success looks like. How might we get there? And yeah, my team has come forward with some really amazing, exciting things that it's not hard to be enthusiastic about. And I'd always rather be enthusiastic about somebody else's work rather than my own. That feels a lot more comfortable for me as a human.
Well, you're amazing. I'm just curious, and I'm sure a lot of other listeners are as well. What membership, I'm sorry, what leadership muscles? I'm thinking of, your members, but you're demonstrating as a leader how much you're putting into this. I'm sure that there's things that you've learned that you never anticipated you would. What are some of those leadership lessons?
Change management is the big one. Um, this is my fourth organization starting a marketing function for the first time. And so, though it's not my first rodeo, every rodeo is very different. And I've been in a federation, I've been in an association before. This is a federation. Internally, working with programmatic colleagues, coming up with a narrative framework to talk about our work that is different than our theory of change and program framework took a lot of change management. I'm not trying to reorganize how you do your work as programmatic experts. No way, no how. But they're talking at a postgraduate doctoral level, and I need to bring people along who are just starting high school. So help me find the intersection of bringing audiences along, but we can't start at the doctoral thesis level. And that took a lot of change management and a lot of reflection on how my enthusiasm can sometimes be interpreted as steamrolling. And so that enthusiasm, how do I make sure that I'm demonstrating to people that I've listened, that I've absorbed what they've said, and that I've taken it into account? That's been a big learning for me because I can bring enthusiasm all the live long day. That's not always the best motivator with people from other cultures and people from other disciplines.
That's very interesting because I'm sure for you, you're giving it all to get the job done, and like everything else, it's as much about other people as it is about ourselves. No matter how well intentioned we are, I mean that becomes the tricky part. Okay, so if we were having this conversation at Habitat's 75th anniversary, what would you hope that most people would say about the decisions that you're making today?
Ooh, I would say I would love people to say, yeah, 2026 is when I really started paying attention to habitat. That's when, because awareness, at least in the US, is pretty high. It's over 80%. But understanding falls off a cliff, and actually particularly with younger people. So in 25 years, I would love for people who are my age in 25 years to say, yeah, that was around the time that I got involved with Habitat because I saw them reflecting the things that I wanted to see happen in my country, in my community, and in society. And it gave me an outlet for wanting to show up for my neighbors and live my values. And that's what got me really excited to get involved with Habitat as a movement.
Yeah, that's interesting because it sounds like it's both amplifying what you do for people and encouraging them to get involved. And those two things are really at the heart of what the whole nonprofit mission should be about. We started by talking about honoring things and challenging. Do you think that there are more emerging challenges or maybe even emerging opportunities that will shape Habitat's work, say, in the next decade? Since we're looking futuristically here,
Goodness. Yeah, a member of our board said at our last meeting that 3-year plans are folly at this point. 5-year plans are just ludicrous. So we have a vision, we have a strategy for the next 3 years where we're hoping to help 50 million people through all of our interventions. So we have a plan for the next 3 years. Things are getting more complex geopolitically. The cost of construction is only going up further. So those complexities will only grow, it feels like, at this moment. Um, but the sunny side of that is because the complexity and the affordability is such a challenge, it's on the docket everywhere. The European Union has a housing minister for the first time. The first ever high-level UN meeting focused on housing happened just earlier this year, and Habitat was the only NGO in the room for that. So across the United States, every mayor, many members of Congress are thinking about this. So there is opportunity because it's gotten to such a crisis point. So finding those ways where we can serve as a bridge builder, exactly to your point earlier about, government and private sector and how can nonprofits be a convener and a bridge builder to create mutual purpose. That's where we're going to need to lean into because we readily acknowledge that we can't solve it alone, that the housing crisis. So where can we find unlikely bedfellows that might come together and help solve things?
I love your term mutual purpose. We may have to keep using that more and more as purpose evolves into participation, particularly as a demonstration of really activating what people's vision is. I just love it. Here's a question for you, because what you're doing is really marketing. What would you like marketers, both nonprofit and for profit, to learn from Habitat's 50-year journey?
Ooh. It's a constant evolution, which is true in any business. And it's a matter of approaching that evolution from a place of that's what needs to celebrate. For folks who haven't been there for the whole 50 years, because of course, over 50 years, nobody's here that was at the start. Although our first volunteer is still engaged. His name is Clive Rainey, and he's amazing, and comes and speaks about what it was like to be the first volunteer down in Americus, Georgia. In any event, so as you get further into your history, there's fewer people there around who can tell the story of what it was like at the beginning. So it can be easy to lose sight of how it's evolved. And so when you're at a point, an inflection point of evolution, it can feel really daunting. But acknowledging, let's look at how we've evolved up to this point and acknowledge that we have it within us. So something we talk about a lot with our campaign is that we were built for this moment. And so let's celebrate that and approach this from a place of confidence and how might we, rather than how are we going to do this. So that's the thing is when you're trying new stuff, test and learn quickly, be willing to fail, kind of bring that entrepreneurial spirit, which there's less of in the nonprofit space. You don't want to fix what isn't broken. So yeah, just acknowledge and celebrate how you've already evolved up to this point and build on that, build from a place of self-confidence that it can be done.
Oh, that's a wonderful answer. I was going to end the interview with a question that I think you might just have answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I think it might be worth repeating. But in your view, what does Habitat teach us about how organizations can endure, not by standing still, but by continually re-earning trust?
Oh, goodness. That's such a good question. Um, Trust happens in a lot of small moments. I love that imagery of there's the glass jar. It's something Brene Brown talks about putting the marbles in. It's the small moments. So an anniversary is, of course, a big moment, but Habitat's impact is built on build sites and in community rooms all day, every day, where people are connecting with each other. So our mission is bringing people together to build homes, communities, and hope. The hope is a really important thing. It's not intangible. So it's finding those small moments, constantly creating those opportunities for small moments and inviting people to participate. That it's not about you, it's about the people that come together to make the movement real. So whether it's your customers or your stakeholders, whatever it might be, honoring those people and building those moments of trust, that's what it really takes for things to grow because that's when it snowballs beyond something that you yourself can control and it's just trying to guide it a little bit down the path.
That just sounds wonderful, and I think that you are well prepared for the 50th celebration in big ways and in small. And it'll be very interesting to watch you, and particularly your first brand campaign over the next 12 months and beyond. And it is such a great organization. I am honored to have you on for your insights and for all that you represent with doing this for Habitat. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to hearing a lot more from you.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you for your really thoughtful questions. They're so thought-provoking. I really appreciate the time.
The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories. Thanks so much for watching. If you find this kind of content helpful, please click like or subscribe. Again, thanks so much.